Next, we have Roma. This is another Netflix film. This past week, I sat down to do my top 10 Netflix movies of 2018. And that list is going to be coming out probably by the time a lot of people are listening to this. And at the very top of the list, spoiler alert, I suppose, Roma is the best one. It's the best Netflix film. It's also, I think, the best Netflix film made in any year. It's not exactly the highest bar. It's competing with films like Mudbound and Beasts of No Nation and that which great films, but definitely not films that I don't think a lot of people had on their top 10 lists for the past couple of years. But as we kind of enter award season, I know you would agree with this, Will. Roma is one of those films that is very much talked about. It seems like a shoe-in, a front-runner for Best Picture. I think it's going to be one of those rare foreign language films that's going to get a nomination for Best Picture. And at the moment, I see it winning the whole thing. So the film itself, as I mentioned, is foreign language. It takes place in Mexico. And it was written and directed by Alfonso Cuarón, a wonderful director.
Yeah, great Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes, I consider him just the best working director when it comes to one takes and really editing in general. I think that he's one of the best around. I think that he's just a wonderful filmmaker who constantly pushes the envelope. I think Children of Men, his film from 2006, I want to say, is one of the best films of the 21st century. And his new film is one that's probably more personal than some of his more recent efforts. I think the last film a lot of people saw from him was Gravity. That was the Sandra Bullock film with George Clooney, takes place in space. And that one was kind of like a razzle-dazzle space kind of action, not even action, but survival kind of thriller. It was a beautiful film. I really enjoyed Gravity, but Roma is definitely something a bit more restrained. It takes place in the 1970s. It is the story about I want to say upper middle class family. You know, they aren't quite rich, but they are, they do well enough. The patriarch of the family is a doctor in the city. This is Mexico City, and they make enough that they have, a nice house. They have a couple of live-in housekeepers. And this is in the Colonia Roma district of Mexico City, as per the name of this one. The story follows this family as they begin to fall apart due to a series of circumstances. And we see all of this happen through the perspective of their housekeeper, played by Yalitza Aparicio. And she is based on a real character. And you'll start to notice as the film progresses, you're watching her do mundane things, cleaning floors, cooking and getting things for people, and really sort of functioning in this family unit. And there is an obvious and clear distinction between her social economic status and the status of this family. And we start to follow her story. We learn a little bit more about her. We learn, some of her childhood. We learn some of her friends, this man that she is going with, and then eventually she becomes pregnant while all of this is happening. From there, you have a series of events that are really captured, as I was saying before, like memories. Alfonso Cuarón based this movie on actual events that happened to him and the people he knows. The story is based on a real woman, not named Cleo, like in this film. I forget the name of the person it is based on. However, he actually asked her permission to make this film. And this is one of those films that it's one of those films where it does seem like a lot is happening as you're watching the daily lives of these characters, mainly Cleo. Cleo is obviously the star here, and her performance is what this movie is. And the best things about the film are what I think what's going to continue to make this film at the top of people's discussions as one of the best of the year. And that really is the directing and the writing. Now, the directing here is about as experimental as you can get with a film without alienating your audience to a fault. There are certain camera tricks in here, things like where the camera will be an observer in one moment, the way that a lot of cameras are. to sort of being a rotating, like a living room fan almost, rotating back and forth and up and down as you're watching a character move about. And this is one of those wonderful films where camera work does tell a lot of the story. And thank goodness it does, because a lot of the story is sort of brilliantly realized photographs moving. And for some people, that's all they want. And for me, that can be the case as well. I think that just watching, art on screen is what this movie can really be for much of the runtime. There are certain things about it that rubbed me the wrong way that I wouldn't really be able to get into without going into spoilers, but there is something kind of interesting when you consider the artist himself, Alfonso Cuarón, who says himself that he sort of sees himself through one of the young children in this family unit, this family that loves Cleo. And this is his story of what he thinks his housekeeper was going through in his memories. And there's sort of at times, there can be sort of a disconnection from my reading of the film between how he views her and how she views herself that I think will challenge some people to walk away from this film feeling like it is as satisfying as the artistry they just saw really made it out to be. And so that's what, for me, can hold it back from being on the lines of some sort of masterpiece. I really don't know if I can say it's a masterpiece on the whole. It is a masterpiece in terms of directing. I think anybody who watches this film, especially if they're fortunate enough to catch it on a big screen, they're going to walk away from this with, picking their jaws up, wondering why more directors don't experiment with cameras so successfully the way that Alfonso Cuarón seems to do in his sleep. And I want to credit, of course, more than Cuarón himself, but he also was the director of photography here, which I didn't mention. He did the cinematography, he did the editing. So this is sort of his own personal, if an EGOT could be in like one movie, this gets about 3/4 of the way there. So that said, it's very much his movie. I love personal visions and how they can be expressed on screen. There are some nits that I do have with how he chose to tell a personal story about him and a very influential person in his life, and how I think that might have made her feel as a real person. It really isn't within a lot of the viewing experience's control. I think it's something that kind of goes and extends beyond the rules that this film sets for itself. So it's hard for me to walk away from this one writing it off. Absolutely. I don't think you could and still consider yourself someone who loves film, because this is a film for film lovers. But at the same time, I really don't think it's one that's going to click with me in the same way it has with a lot of other people, but I really appreciate it for what it is. I can't wait for you to see it, Will Ashton, because I want to hear all about your thoughts on it, and especially because it is a film that, like last year's Coco, it's told, not, of course, Coco wasn't in Spanish the entire time, but it is a film that does celebrate Mexican culture in very authentic ways, and I really love that we're starting to get more stories on this level, out of that culture, especially in a time where, and we don't have to get into it, but, obviously at the moment, relations between America and Mexico are quite fraught right now. And so with all of that in mind, I definitely would love to watch this movie again. I can't wait for it to release on Netflix again, because I want to see it in my living room as well, and see if maybe I like it a little bit better the second time, which would mean that I would really love it. So that's Roma. And when are you going to be able to check this one out, Will Ashton?
Hopefully next week. I was trying to figure out when it is playing here. It was initially set to come this weekend, but the theater distributor said there was a scheduling mishap, so they're trying to get it next week. So I guess knock on wood, fingers crossed that it's coming here then. If not, when does it come on Netflix?
I believe next week, I want to say. I think it was, okay. I want to say it's like between December 14th and the 21st. I apologize. It's been in limited release since November 21st. But actually, I do have it right here. It's going to start streaming this Friday. So pretty soon. That's December 14th. So there you go.
One way or the other, I will be seeing it soon. I do hope, however, that I can see it on the big screen, because everyone, their brother is like, that's the way you have to see it. It's the true way to see it. And I believe what they're saying, but I just hope I get that experience.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I definitely see this one. I see Cuarón getting a Best Director nomination. Part of the reason I think this will win Best Picture is because I think they're going to give Cuarón the Best Director, and there tends to be a pretty solid link between Best Director and Best Motion Picture. So that's Roma. I was going between a B plus and an A minus, and I kind of am at an A minus at this point because I do think it is a must see. And I'm having difficulty kind of like bumping it down to the B area. So, but you were going to say something?
No, I was gonna say. I mean, we have at the Oscars of late, it's more of a divide between Best Picture and Best Director. But I do think this one might be an example of a film winning both. Although I don't know.
I don't think the rule's been broken forever. So
yeah, I mean, I think I've said this before. I still think A Star Is Born is probably gonna win, but it's hard to know.
Yeah,
this early in the game, but we'll see.